Hey everybody, I'm Laura DeCarlo of Career Directors International. If you're starting, currently thinking about starting, or actively building a resume writing or career coaching business, I am so glad you have joined me today. In this show, we share tool strategy and mindset tips that lead to your success without the stress. Today and every time we go on this show, we're currently streaming on CDI's Facebook page, YouTube channel, and LinkedIn page. But listen, I'm not going to ask you to jump through any crazy hoops to give me permission to see who you are. But it is fun to know who I'm talking to. So please be sure when you initially comment that you include your full name so I know who I'm talking to. It's nothing weirder than seeing a response from LinkedIn user and having no idea who we're chatting with. And listen, if you don't know me yet, my goal is to become your not so secret superpower. At Career Directors International, we provide everything you need to love and excel at what you do so you can make a difference while also earning an exceptional living as a career industry professional. So we're continuing to dive into September is International Update Your Resume Month. That is an event that CDI registered over 20 years ago, I think 24 years ago actually. And today we're going to be talking about information gathering steps and strategies you can use to avoid blank page syndrome when you're writing your resume. And yes, I'm excited to give one lucky attendee a copy of Resumes for Dummies 8th edition Kindle today, as I have done every week since I started talking Update Your Resume Month back in August. Yay. All right, so before we do that, I want to challenge everyone to do 3 things. First, let me know who you are in the chat. All you have to do is drop your full name until I know whether I can see your name or not, and where you are joining me from. Second, if you have questions or want to participate, that makes this show so much more fun when I have people who are contributing through the chat. Please drop those questions and comments in the chat. And third, if you'd like to make sure you don't miss out on the show, be sure to follow, like, and/or subscribe, depending on how you join me. All right, I don't see anything in the chat today. We're going to start talking about how to bust blank page syndrome and collect the right information to write your resume. So let me just close that caption so it's not sitting there the whole time, and double check chat. Okay, nothing there yet. Slow start, but that is okay. First, if you are ready and you're here and you just haven't commented yet, give me a let's go in the chat. All right, so I feel like one of the toughest things about resume writing is getting started. You know, after 30 years now of writing and teaching resume writing to both professionals, as in professional resume writers, as well as job seekers, whether they're, in a placement program at their university that I'm running, or they're coming to me for training through another venue. I've always seen that great advice, samples, and strategies, no matter how much you give someone, they still end up staring at a blank screen, thinking, where am I going to come up with that best way to say something, that perfect phrase cold off of the top of my head? And so I actually came up with this strategy when I taught creative writing as a way to bust through that thought system and just have content there ready for you to work from versus trying to, just come up with it. And this is a great formula. Yes, it is. There are intensive steps here. So I'm not going to deny that, but it leads to the best resumes. Absolutely. So chat is still silent, but I would love to know anybody else ever suffer with blank page syndrome. And it's going to be really helpful if you tell me, and this is in regards to, anything that you're writing. Maybe it was a term paper or a letter or an email response. You're just staring at the screen, that lack of productivity. And also, while we're at it, go ahead and let me know if you're a job seeker or a professional resume writer, because that can help me best pitch the content today. All right, so here's the deal. If you do a bunch of footwork up front, even before interviewing a job seeker as a professional resume writer, it's going to make writing the resume so much easier. I am all about the data. If you're a job seeker, there are things you're going to gather before you ever start to try to write the perfect content for your resume. If you're a professional resume writer, some of this you're going to tell your clients to gather before their interview with you or before they fill out their resume questionnaire. That's going to save us from staring at a blank screen or getting a questionnaire that's less than adequately filled out, or performing that information gathering interview and having the job seeker tell you, oh, I need to go look that up. So before I go into the list, I'll just give you a little bit of insight. If I was intaking a resume client who had decided to work with me, I would at this point be telling them that I usually say something like this. Okay, this is going to be really fun. This is going to be the first time that anyone has ever asked you, tell me about yourself, and really wanted to hear everything. I'm going to help you get past the things that you're taking for granted as part of your day-to-day job, that really dig into the things that make you shine, that, again, I see people taking for granted. I'm just going off the top of my head here, so a little bit rambly. So that we can make sure you're ready for this session and seeing yourself in the best light. I'm going to go down a list with you of some of the things you might want to gather. And I can tell you, whether you're a job seeker, gathering these things together, or you're a resume writer telling a job seeker what to gather, that this would make a great checklist of things they might look at that I'm about to talk about. And then at that point, I will just tell them everything they need to gather together so that they'll be most prepared. I also recommend they should scan through it all very quickly so that they are as prepared to answer questions as possible. But I don't want to stress a job seeker out when I'm asking them to gather this information. So I always make a point of saying, and don't worry, skim through it, familiarize yourself. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to guide you. But if for some reason you can't put your finger on something when we're in our interview, but it seems like it's pertinent and it's there, I'm going to write your draft, leaving space, and I'll highlight it. And you can input that information when you receive the draft. This is a really important boundary setting activity, because on one hand, it's putting your client at ease, that they're going to have a chance if they aren't fully prepared. So they're not going to necessarily put off that scheduled interview. And they're also going to know that they're not going to miss out on something important when they go forward. But also for you as the professional, you're protecting yourself from having data continually thrown at you once you've completed a questionnaire and or a resume writing intake interview. Okay, so if you are ready to get into the list, I think I broke it down into 11 categories of resources a job seeker might gather together to write their own or have content for their professional resume writer. If you're ready to hear this, give me a let's go in the chat. And remember, or if you're just joining me, I can't always see your name. So the first time you comment, please share your full name. All right, nothing in the chat yet, although I see the numbers. I know you're out there, and participation is what leads to the giveaway. I can't give away a book if I don't know who is here. All right, so I call these past and present resources that we need to look at. And some of these I'll talk more about than others. So resumes, former resumes. A former resume can be a great place to start, but it's usually just a building block. I want to stress that the worst thing a job seeker can do or a resume writer can do is to take an old resume and just add on to it, unless it was professionally crafted or you took the time to take a course or learn the steps as a professional to know what you're doing. Otherwise, we're just it's like tacking on an addition without a permit and without carpentry and those types of technical skills. A resume makes a great foundation for having a timeline that you're going to throw information into as you interview. For example, when I work with a job seeker, whether I'm training them or writing their resume for them, I recommend you pick one resume that best represents your timeline and your experience. I don't want to see 6 resumes. I don't want to see, especially don't want to see a functional resume. I want to see the best resume. You submit one resume to me that's the best. And then along with your target and the other things I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take your most recent job position especially, and whether you have paragraphs or bullets, each one of those is going to turn into an interview point that we're going to dig into in the interview. So I will literally take a paragraph and break it down into components under bullets, so I can use it as foundation for when I'm going to, dig in for more information. That's going to be guided based on the target that the job seeker has. So one really solid resume. If you don't have a resume yourself, or you're intaking a job seeker who doesn't have a resume, simply ask for a timeline. I always ask these job seekers for, what is your current job target? And then give me your job titles, company names, and dates of employment for the last 4 jobs or approximately 10 to 15 years. And that will give you a good foundation to build upon in some other ways that I'm going to talk about here. All right, so let me know in the chat if you like the limit it to 1 resume versus somebody inundating you with a ton as you're doing the process, or again, as a job seeker, if it makes sense, just pick the best one to work from versus spreading all these different open Word documents on your screen. Okay, employment records. So there are different areas of employment records that can really help you. I know I'm just gonna start talking to professional resume writers and not job seekers. I think you can follow along with the wording I'm gonna use because I just find that who is attending is professional resume writers. So with employment records, we want to get our job seekers to come up with documentation that talks about what they were responsible for and any glowing elements to that. So that can be, we can be asking for written evaluations. We can be asking for company job descriptions. If they don't have those, they can go look on the company's website. They can Google their job title and find one that is a close proximity to it and adjust it as needed. It's super valuable to have these things because written evaluations, they're going to talk about how good a person did. Well, they're going to vary, but usually they talk about those things we would look at with a client on a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and possibly threats. But we're looking for the golden nuggets there that our clients are going to take for granted. Can really help you to get to the unique selling proposition sometimes, as well as understand what might have gotten left off of a resume by having a job description. Again, we have that factor of what people take for granted. All right, training records is another area. This is broad. When I say training, I'm also talking about degrees. So this could be asking a job seeker to gather together certificates, lists of training, degrees, licenses. I mean, if it's already on their most relevant resume, great. But again, there can be things that are taken for granted. I would rather see everything and decide what is relevant based on their target than have them filter something out or forget something. So it's super valuable to look at everything. You also get a sense of, is this person a lifelong learner? What are they drawn to? It can tell you a lot about a person. Recommendations. So I love having my clients gather together letters of recommendation, thank you letters. That could be it could be emails from customers, bosses, there's my mind, I can't think of the name. Companies that sell to you. Oh my gosh, that's terrible for somebody who works with words for a living. But a letter of recommendation or a Bravo award or anything like that. So I'm kind of crossing over because awards is a separate category I have. But any of these things that spell out what a person excels at or thanks them for something they achieved is fantastic. Like my husband works for a major aerospace and aviation DoD contractor, and the company is super good about recognizing employees. And he is also somebody who is a go-getter and problem solver. And about once every 6 weeks, he brings home a award document that spells out exactly what he did for the company. And those kinds of things to have in front of you when you're writing a resume, super valuable. Now, from a control standpoint, if I'm writing the resume for the job seeker, I'm not going to have them send me all those. I'm going to have them in front of them during the interview so that I can ask them to read them to me and pull out the good pieces that I want to possibly quote in the resume if we can, and as long as it's not protected information we can't share. But even if it is, we get a sense of what a person's unique selling propositions and brand is. And at the end of the day, if you are looking at that kind of top line information that you're going to get from recommendations and potentially awards and other accommodations, you're going to get a sense of how this particular job seeker excels against other job seekers. And that's going to influence your summary very, very strongly, because my take on the funnel of a resume, the summary is where we get somebody excited about the candidate once the candidate is in a smaller virtual pile of qualified candidates. Because now it's not about do they have the qualifications, it's why do I want to spend the time to interview this one. Okay, so the next is projects. Your client, your job seeker might have some major projects or abstracts, details about them. This could be, and I'm crossing into new graduate category that I'll talk about more a little bit later. But sometimes just asking them any major projects, papers that you have information on could be helpful. You know, if they're looking over those things before they talk to you, they're not going to be thinking, oh gosh, what? And if you as a job seeker are inputting that information and looking it up, you're being reminded of the things you contributed. So I do always like to ask for those. And then awards I mentioned, along with recommendations. Publications is another area. Give me a list of publications written or published, such as books or articles. Sometimes this makes a third-page addendum if somebody has done a lot and they're not, say, scientific, medical, academia, needing a longer CV, or international and it's expected in a longer document. Presentations is another area. You know, what presentations have you made, on what topics, where and when were they presented? Again, this leads to somebody who's going out there not as a normal part of their job and speaking and presenting and maybe training. That is obviously an accolade that speaks to their value and can make you connect the dots on how that person is very qualified. Affiliations is another area. See, I'm going through these quickly. You probably thought after last week I couldn't talk about anything quickly. I can, I swear. So when we get to professional affiliations and board roles, I mean, we're talking everything from volunteer roles held for business, board level, social, civil, academic, even sports when we can make it relevant, or there's leadership. I always say you're better to explore everything than to just assume. Like, for instance, you see that somebody, you know, has they did something in a sport at university and they have a career since then. They could have put it on their resume just because they think it's what you're supposed to do. And you might be thinking all about how, oh gosh, that's not relevant. We need to get that off of there. But I believe that job seekers are like puzzles, okay? People are puzzles, not just job seekers. And we have to examine every piece to fully understand that brand and how it meshes together and how we can sell it. And I have had my beliefs challenged many a times, just by going ahead and asking the questions about something that didn't appear relevant. In fact, it's literally driven the entire way a resume was developed based on something that I was eyeballing through an entire preparation and interview session going, that's not relevant. Nobody cares about that. And when I finally asked about it, being so grateful I did, because seeing how everything just fell into place in a different way. So pick up the pieces. Don't be afraid to, list each of those roles, and be willing to dig into recognitions, awards, projects chaired and their outcomes, hours contributed, leadership roles, areas of expertise it went into. You can discard. Let's be clear here. We're talking about busting blank page syndrome and gathering the correct content for winning resumes. And it's impossible to have it happen when you just sit in front of a blank screen and try to type it up, because you're going to leave so much for granted. Believe me, it happens. When I was in graduate school, still studying writing, I took a nonfiction course, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake, because I knew everything there is to know about me, and that's what I'm being asked to write about. And that's a real gross misnomer, and it's one of the reasons why it is so hard to write your own resume, because you make assumptions about what your audience understands. And when you do that, you're going to leave out really important things. So write it down, copy it from these different documents I'm mentioning, cut and paste whenever possible, have it all there, because you can reword it, you can remove it, you can run it through ChatGPT and have it give you a succinct overview of something that's long and gross. Not saying you should go with the specific wording that you're given, especially if you haven't trained the AI to speak in your voice or your client's voice if you're a professional resume writer. But I'd rather you had the data and struck it than you made the mistake of leaving something critical out. Okay. All right, the chat is still silent, so I will keep going. For new grads or those with a major certification that is the job target, they really struggle with what to tell you, and it can be really tempting as a professional resume writer to just list the courses that they took under education and leave it at that. And honestly, that's never going to help a job seeker survive keyword scans or be seen as someone who's qualified. In fact, when you consider what a small part of the population graduates and gets careers in their field of training, it's very, very clear that so many people are going to look at the resume as a hiring agent, and they're going to be like, oh, they got a degree in that, and they had courses. They don't have any real world experience. And it's so easy to use their own life experience of, well, I have a degree too, and I never used it a day in my life, and decide that none of that is relevant. Instead, we want to dig. So new graduates, I'm like, if you've kept your major course textbooks, I want you to go through that detailed table of contents in the front. Make a list of the areas of knowledge you have, except for areas that maybe they hated. Okay, I always want to stress that if they would want nothing to do with it, to just leave it out. But otherwise, that is such a rich source of what a person should know. Course syllabi can be another, and school course descriptions from the course catalog, which are almost always online today, can be a great place. So I often ask my clients, my new grads, before we do our interview, I will say, send me a list of the core classes you took, and if you have a link to the if you know where the catalog is online, send it to me. Because I've never had an issue getting access to one, but I want to have actually pulled the course descriptions from each of those courses into my blank page for the interview, so I can talk to them and be able to ask them about, first off, did we hate this and we want nothing to do with it? Make sure they didn't just put it on there preemptively. And if they're okay with it, what did you learn? What projects and papers? Tell me about the projects and papers you did. Were there any case studies, presentations, group projects? I'm digging for actual experience. If we go down the chain some, and instead of saying a university graduate, we look at somebody who went through like a technical program, like when medical transcription was a thing, I would be like, what specialties did you cover? How fast did you transcribe? How are you with accents? I would be wanting to see all the courses that they took to know those specialties that they might have forgotten. And of course, again, if there's any they hate, we want to leave them off. And then finally, we get to those who are potentially making a civilian transition from the military. And they're going to have a variety of other resources. It could be evaluation and performance reports, DD-214s, fitness reports, lists of medals, and certificates. It could be military occupational specialty, a SMART transcript, verification of military experience and training, a brief sheet, an education information report. If the candidate doesn't have any of those things, and let me just stress, I purposely don't want to do military to civilian, although I know how to do it. But usually you would send them to the National Personnel Records Center to learn how to obtain their official military personnel file if they don't have anything handy, and look for details there. Okay, but the idea is we have stuff, right? Now, there are some other ways we can get information if the client job seeker is hitting a dead end. You could visit the former or current employer's web page to see whether they list the job descriptions. You could contact HR or a former colleague to see whether they can supply the description. And if you're not connected, or the job seeker's not connected, tell them to try LinkedIn to find somebody. If we shouldn't be that disconnected unless your client. I can think of scenarios where like a job seeker was 14 years off the job, medically recovering from a stroke, so things do happen. I mentioned the Google search for the job title earlier. There are sites like Glassdoor that can be helpful. But honestly, I would just go to Google, put in the title plus the company name, start there. If that doesn't work, put in the title, and that's going to be valuable in a moment as well. Industry professional associations are a rich resource for job descriptions, often in their career resources or regular resources. So you could ask your job seeker to go there and look. If they don't have the information, you can go there yourself and grab the information. I've worked with, when I was the resume expert for Project Management Institute, I can remember, and if you're a CDI member, you may have seen the new graduate career transition lessons we have, and I actually show the before and after resume for one of these people. But somebody had just earned their PMP certification, and I am not a proponent of thinking I know everything and that, I've done this so many times, I don't need to do my homework. Well, maybe I've already done the homework and I can go grab it, but I want to be able to go to PMI's website and look at the PMP and see the core areas the person is now qualified in. So again, we can talk about them, and I can see how they apply to their former experience and how I can best present the jobs they did in the past in light of the job they're trying to pursue now. So again, getting that data up front is going to help influence the questions that you ask. It's going to help you have information to work with. It's going to give you the language that you're trying to target effectively. And then the last one I have on my list here is the ONET website, specifically for the military occupational classifications crosswalk, if we're, again, talking about that military to civilian transition. So let me pause there and let me know if there's anything else you would add to this list for past and present resources. And I say it that way because I'm still going to talk about one more place we can look, and that's towards the target that they're pursuing, which I consider to be a future resource. All right, so let me know in the chat, and I will keep going while I'm waiting to see if anybody participates. You guys are really quiet today, and that's really strange because usually it's so participative, and I love it. All right, so like I said, we're not done. We do want to look at job descriptions for jobs that our prospect, our job seeker, is targeting. Whether you're writing your own resume or you're working with the professional who I'm primarily talking to on this show, this is super important. Now, it could be that the job seeker is targeting the exact same job they've had and they're just wanting to do it somewhere else. Or it could be that, like I was just mentioning, they're making a complete career change, or they're looking to progress up the chain. Like maybe they are, a doer today and they want to be a manager tomorrow. They think they're ready for that. So what are we needing to target to? So again, you can put this on the job seeker. Like some resume writers like to ask, not just for job titles that the person is targeting, but send me, 1 to 3 job descriptions that are a good fit for what you're targeting. And that way you can see exactly, what they're claiming they had in this job that they did most recently and what they're looking at, what it requires. And a couple of really cool things happen when you get those descriptions before you have your information gathering session with the job seeker. So I have helped when I was working with job seekers by looking at those things up front and preparing before an interview versus doing like a cookie cutter of just asking the same questions. When I would look at a job description, say for somebody who, a couple of examples. They're looking to do the same job and they send you a couple descriptions and you see there are items in the description that aren't in their current job from the last resume they sent you or from the job description that they sent you if they didn't have a resume. So now you can go through each of the bullets that they do have, but you've prepared. You have a list of topics that you see in their target job that aren't on their resume or in their current job description. So when you get done talking about what you do know, you can shift over to, and by the way, John, when I've worked with job seekers who have held your position in the past, there were some other areas, it could be other areas, other equipment, other responsibilities. It's going to vary based on the type of candidate we're talking about. But there have been some other areas of experience that they often brought to the table. As we've discussed before, it can be really easy to take that stuff for granted. So what I want to do is I want to go down a bulleted list with you of other areas, and you tell me whether you did have responsibility for them or not. And the ones that you did, we will circle back to and dig into as we have with your other responsibilities. And you go down that list and they say yes or no, and then you dig in. But I guarantee you that anybody who was in any small bit questioning the investment that they made with you now feels like super confident because you had pinpointed things that they took for granted that are showing up in ads, meaning they're viable and important. Same thing goes for when somebody is pursuing a promotion, a higher level job. You include the items that you're seeing in that higher level position that don't cross over, and you ask them in the exact same way. And it's inspiring and confidence building, and it also gives you the data so that you're able to position the candidate as effectively as possible for that next position. Of all the things I have mentioned, I feel like this research part of their future targets is incredibly important. I mean, you need to get their data from what they have done, but this whole making sure we mine the gap and make them match the target is super critical, because even if they didn't have a job description or a former resume, if we were to use a target job in the same way for our questioning. Well, did you do this? Tell me about it. And we go down the rabbit hole, which is my last point that I'm going to talk about today. So again, this is information gathering. This is making sure you have everything you need so that when you sit down to write the resume, you have good insight. You have all the content you need. You have the full 360-degree picture of the candidate. And one of the things I do when I'm interviewing someone, and I do type very quickly. You can look to do Zoom meetings where it's recorded and have it transcribed. You could, use other audio transcription services. And I know in some areas we need to get permission to record someone. But as part of this process, that makes sense. And you can put it in your contract and explain it in your intake process and the benefits of it. Always spin for the win, showing somebody why it's valuable that you have that double redundancy of I'm listening, I'm typing, but I'm also recording so that, I don't have to go, oh, what you said was so brilliant, but I didn't catch it, right? But by gathering all this together, as I'm going, I use a highlighter, and I'm talking about highlighter in my Microsoft Word. Somebody says something, I get them excited because I'll be like, ooh, I just highlighted that because that is you just literally shared a piece of, your ROI to a prospective employer with what you said there. That is so going to show up. Some form of that is so going to show up in your summary. And I will highlight it in green because it's something that later when I go back to these notes will draw my eye. And when you use a little bit of color coding in that way, it's super quick to apply a little bit of color, and you'll be able to find those items easily. But anyway, so this is all about busting blank page syndrome. We get the data down. We're digging into the data. We're no longer looking at a blank page. And I know it sounds tempting to skip it, but I swear it's so valuable. And I don't think without this strategy, I would have been helping my university graduates to be part of we had the highest placement for the 7 years I ran the program. And I was hired because I said I wrote a damn good resume and I'd learn the rest. And it was true. But 7 years, we had the highest placement rates out of 11 campuses in 2 countries. My job-seeking clients used to get interviews for just about whatever they wanted. And I say used to because I don't work with job seekers anymore, except for some family, and they do get interviews for whatever they want. And it is because we take this information-heavy approach. We bust out the blank page, and once we've got the information, we dig into it. And I know this isn't going to be the in-depth answer you're probably hoping to get, but I call it just asking questions. Tell me about, you have this on your resume. Tell me about what that entailed. Were there any challenges with that? Were there any opportunities for improvement? Even if all it did was make your job easier, better, or faster, and no one else even ever noticed. Sometimes we have to dig that far. What did you step into? I call it, following the carrot. Just keep digging down that rabbit hole and asking probing questions, and that's how you will get to the goal. When somebody just says, improve sales, how much? What was the climate? Was it a mature product? You just keep asking questions to get to the specifics. And once you have connected that to their responsibilities or their, detailed but not strongly selling achievements that are on there, where they're just asking somebody to assume what it means, you'll have everything you need to be able to prepare the best resume that showcases the client's unique value and moves towards matching their targets. Okay, so dig for the carrot, follow the rabbit hole, whatever. All right, so that's a lot of data. Data is power, knowledge is power. So don't shortcut this process. If you're a job seeker and you stumble upon this, don't go, I'm gonna skip that, because guess what? You're gonna end up with a generic resume, and we don't want that. So What do you think about this? Again, if there's anything you would add, let me know. I see resume writing as an art and a science. It's definitely, you've got to really be on the top of your game to help job seekers be as successful as possible. You've got to be a researcher, an interviewer, a creative writer, a tech writer, a copywriter, and a page layout architect. And it's so much easier when we do this from information we've gathered versus trying to pull it out of thin air. So adopt the process. I guarantee it helps. Okay, so let me know in the chat, did you learn anything new today that you're going to try, or are you already doing this? I'd love to know. And while I'm waiting for that silent chat to become active, I'm just going to say that as we continue through September is International Update Your Resume Month. In next week's show, I'm going to talk about what I call the resume formatting funnel for high impact resumes. And then, technology allowing, I plan to share some resume layouts I have created in Microsoft Word that make an excellent foundation for resumes that are geared for success. Whether you're working with a traditional progressive career chronology, you need to showcase older information for a career change, or you're a new graduate. So, each one of these is a launch pad for creating your unique spin and building a resume that stands out. So I hope that you will join me, and I will attempt a giveaway again next week. I base it on participation, and since we haven't had any, I guess I don't have to give one away this week. So show up next time and be ready to participate. And again, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for notifications. And if you want more between these shows, I will be sharing Update Your Resume Month resources and other related lessons and tools on the replay page on CDI's, that's careerdirectors.com's website. So if you're an association member, you are going to get an email tomorrow, or if you're just on our email list, you're going to get an email tomorrow with this replay and links to those resources. For you job seekers who have joined us today or watched the replay, we have a special place for you on the website. Just go to careerdirectors.com and click on the job seeker link in navigation, and that will let you have access to our member blog, searching for a certified professional to assist you. There are just a variety of resources out there to help you. So don't miss those. So if you aren't currently an association member, I've got up here on the screen some suggestions. Go over to careerdirectors.com, click on free stuff. You can join our community. You can access a variety of deep dive lessons. We've got success testimonials from industry practitioners who initially built six-figure incomes just using the free stuff. And of course, they became members, because if it's that good on the outside, imagine what you get on the inside. But there's a lot there. So I really strongly recommend take the quiz on the page. It's also on the top of the website. It will help you determine your #1 blocker to six-figure success as a career industry pro, and it will tell you where to focus and get started with the free lesson resources. And while you're on the site, be sure to go over to the join page and get on our wait list for membership. We are currently in a wait list format, and we want you to be able to get access when we open the doors. So that's it for today. I thank you so much for joining me, and show up next week for the resume funnel and resume templates that I will be showing, and another chance at the drawing for a Kindle copy of Resumes for Dummies 8th edition. All right, until then, fly higher. I'll see you soon.